What have you found is the biggest way to overcome that procrastination factor of like doing what you know you need to do in order to grow the business?
You need to actually look at the reasons why you're not doing something. Usually we procrastinate because something feels too hard or too easy. It's either too much or it's too boring. And so you either need to make the thing more interesting or make it more easy. I want to be really clear. We never procrastinate for no reason.
Alrighty, welcome everyone to the High Ticket Strategy Podcast. Today we have our special guest, Josh Terry. Josh, you want to do a quick intro?
I'm Josh Terry. I help rich people get richer. I help smart people get smarter.
Hell yeah, dude! I think I think someone coined that term. Jeremy Haynes. His like go-to line is like, "I help rich people get richer."
I haven't heard it. I don't know.
Really?
Yeah, I heard it from a friend and picked it up.
I got you. No, it's a pretty common phrase, but no, the reason I wanted to get Josh on this episode is because, wait, Josh, I think the first time that we met was at Adrian's event, right? Adrian Brambillo. Mm-hmm. And immediately right off the bat, I was like, Josh is one of the most critical and deepest thinkers I've ever met. And I do not say that with any like grain of salt. And I mean, I would take it 100% as a compliment. I've never met any like further like proper strategic thinkers. So with that being said, like nowadays, so many people have such surface level conversations, right? And I feel like you're one of the only few people that I can have a really deep, like interesting conversation about. And why do you think that's the case? Why do you think that our generation has become so surface level in like their conversations?
Well, I could go into the whole like, oh, social media, dopamine, we all have the memory of a goldfish and all that stuff. But the reality is, if you look back in history, we always had the memory of a goldfish. Like that narrative's actually kind of BS. Like if you look at the way we lived in nature is super chaotic. And so people were distracted all the time, always through all of history. And so I think one, it's just kind of a rare thing. But two, I think most people don't know how to welcome deep conversations. And so we learn like basic ways to interact, right? Like you have a way you show up at a party.
Yeah.
Right? And I have a way that I show up at a party. And I've found that there are ways that you can tweak what you're doing socially that make people go, oh, I can drop in here. I can drop in with this person. And a lot of times, one, we don't know it's okay, right? Because, when you're in high school, you say something deep and everybody laughs, right?
Yeah.
And so you just like learn that lesson. So you're, okay, so social things, I'm just going to stay surface level. I'm going to stay shallow. And so it's not that people aren't capable of going deep. Yes, they do have that goldfish thing that they got to deal with and learn how to break through it. But it's not that they're not capable of going deep. I think in a lot of cases, they don't know that it's welcome.
I see. And yeah, like think about it. If you go on the street, right, you strike up a conversation with a stranger, you're not going to go unless you like know the person. Usually it's very surface level. Hey, how are you doing? How's your day been? But I feel like it's also the framing and context of who you can have those conversations with, because the willingness and comfort level to open up to that deep of level, you can only do with a couple people. But I feel like the energy that you give off, or like the presence and the space that you create, it opens up that container for people to open up so much more easily. So, I mean, with that being said, I'm more curious, like how. Yes, you are who you are right now because of your current life experiences. How did your current beliefs and paradigms get shaped? And like, was that a result of your upbringing, or how do you think that was like formed?
Yeah, so some of my upbringing comes from I started life in a very, very conservative upbringing, and some of those things didn't work out for me, and so I needed to break away to learn more creative things, right? Really conservative religion, really conservative politics, a very, Western ideology. And so for me, a lot of my personal growth was breaking out into like learning Eastern philosophy and Eastern ideologies. And if you look at the fundamentals of those, that's sort of like order and chaos, right? And so I grew up in order, and then I needed to learn about chaos. And once I started to get a little bit of both, my life started to tick, right? And so, I grew up with a really good foundation of education and work ethic and like basic rules. And there were things that I just didn't quite have. And, when I started kind of breaking those rules on purpose, I never had a teenage rebellion when I was young.
Yeah.
I had to do it when I was like 25. That was when I started my teenage rebellion.
You were the goody two shoes as a kid?
Yeah, so it's different. I was a agreeable personality.
Ah.
And so
Like people pleasing or?
Yep, I was super people pleasing, but not just people pleasing. It was if somebody told me that something was this way, I'd go, "Oh, okay."
You wouldn't question the paradigm that people put on you.
Yeah, and so I grew up with the typical really strict Western religion rules, for example, and these rules are very, very strict, right? They're to keep society in place. And what I didn't know was, as a child, was that people break these rules all the time.
Yeah.
And they're strict so that the worst rule breakers will rein it in a little bit. And what I would do is I just follow them all perfectly. Right? And so I was on the extreme end of order in terms of like how I would deal with life. And that didn't work. If you are too strict with your rules, things don't work out. And yeah, I had to learn that lesson of breaking out of things because I was just so agreeable. If people told me that if you go to school and get good grades and do all the right things, then you'll get a good job and you'll make a lot of money. You tell me
follow
that,
the traditional
I believe
path.
it, right? Just believe it. And then they say, well, you got to pick something, and that's where things started to fall apart because I liked music. And so I was like, well, could I learn music? And they were like, of course you could learn music. Yeah, just, get in debt by tens of thousands of dollars and then we'll teach you music and everything will be okay. And, one of the saddest days in my life was walking down the aisle on college graduation.
Wow.
Because I distinctly remember walking down the aisle and going, oh, fuck. I didn't learn anything about how to make money. I didn't learn anything about how to build a future for myself. I just was sold that college degrees help you, move forward in life to the next level of the game. And, it prepares you. And then I was like, oh, I didn't do any of that. And I did a kind of interesting thing. I went to a University of Miami, which is a really expensive school. Mm-hmm. Because I was like, okay, I did want to be wealthy. I did want to learn how to, lift myself up in the world, if you will, right? As I walked down the aisle, I realized I did everything wrong. Because they told me to study, so I did. And as I was walking down that aisle, I was like, oh, I became a workaholic. I was anorexic and sick, and I could barely do anything at this point. And all of the other kids are healthy. They got drunk 3 times a week, hung out with their frat friends, and now their frat buddy's dad is going to give them a job. And that didn't click until the end. I was like, oh, it wasn't any of this study that anybody told me to do. And that was one of the places where I started to get a little bit of a rebellious streak against just following things blindly.
The traditional path.
I was like, oh, I know nothing. And so I got out of college and got a job sweeping floors. That was my next step in life.
Was that point of time overwhelming or scary for you, or did you see that as a moment of opportunity? Because there's optimists, there's pessimists, but for some people they'd be like, oh God, I just wasted the last 4 years. I have a lot of debt to pay back in terms of career success, finances. But other people are like, hey, I'm at rock bottom. It's only up from here. How are you feeling during that point of time?
Yeah, so a lot of optimism and pessimism is just based on how much energy you have at the moment.
Really?
And so if you have abundant energy, it's really easy to be optimistic because you're like, oh, I'm just going to bounce from this bad part to this positive part. And don't get me wrong, you can frame it correctly and you can reframe your mind. But a lot of people, their natural optimism and pessimism just comes from how much energy they have that day.
Yeah.
And I was done. And so it was incredibly demoralizing. It was one of the most depressing experiences of my life. And because I had given everything to a college degree that did nothing for me. Right?
Yeah.
Like I was practicing more than 6 hours a day. I was like double majoring in performance and music composition. I was staying up till 3 a.m. just living off of chocolate, like writing music. I was outperforming everybody
Everyone
in
the
terms
music
of
department.
workload.
Yeah.
Like I was outworking everybody. Like I'd come in like bleary-eyed and exhausted, and my professor would be like, "Man, you got to stop partying," and I'd like that hurt. Once my violin professor was like, "You need to stop going to parties," and I was like, "What?
What are you talking about, dude? Like,
I went to 2 parties the whole time I was in college.
no way.
Yeah. Because I was so agreeable, I just did what the curriculum
system
told me to do.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And so like post grad, you got a job sweeping floors. Is that right?
Yeah, in the construction industry.
Got it. Construction industry. And did you did your career as I believe you played violin, right? Did your career as a violinist ever start to get any traction while you were in the construction industry, or?
Yeah, so I graduated college. I wanted to be a rock star, and I realized I knew nothing. I got a job in the construction industry, sweeping floors. It was a wire rope company. And so I went from playing the violin to having ex-cons teach me how to tie a metal rope in knots with my bare hands, which is a rather odd switch of the use of the hands.
Yeah.
But I worked there for like 2 years. By the time I got done, I was the foreman. And then I switched to teaching music. And so I was a music teacher for about 8 years. And during that time, I was like, there was a point when I was in like 5 bands at the same time, and just trying to find ways to succeed in the music industry. So I was a performing musician and a music teacher.
Nice. So I guess that's your first touch of like the coaching industry, because then that was you evolving from just a regular 9-to-5 worker to you being that true mentor, that teacher. Is that right?
Yeah. So I'll tell you a little bit, sort of like the progression of what made me a communicator and a coach. And so it starts with me as a child. I always wanted my friends to win. And so I was always that kid that was like, let's figure this out. And so that part was very early ingrained in me. Like, you know, things like, oh, you like this girl? Like, how do we make this work for you, buddy? You know, like I was just like, I was always trying to figure out my friends' problems and my problems. I was a very curious child. And so that was where it started. And then I was often like somebody that would, you know, help others learn when I was in school. And then when I got that job at the wire rope company, I became the lead instructor. And so like started sweeping floors. The ex-cons taught me how it was all going. And then I became the teacher for the new guys that came in. That was one of my main roles, was to teach everybody as they came in. And then I became a music teacher. And so teaching somebody very young, once you learn pretty intelligent concepts, is a fascinating, mind-bending experience. Because you realize how much you have to break something down.
Yeah.
Right? And so I had a degree in music, which means I had been told the most complex things about music that people could teach, right? Yeah. Like, it's like I'm not like building myself up here. It's just like that's what.
Of course, that's the point of the degree.
Yeah, right. And then you go and you teach a child, and you go. They come in for the first piano lesson, and you think you're gonna teach them notes. You're like, oh yeah, like let me show you. Like, okay, so there's A, B, C, D. No. First, you have to go. That's a piano. Right? That large object that you see there, that's a piano.
Yeah. You got to break it real down to the basics.
And then you go, see this part right here? If you hit it, it makes sounds. And you see how there's black ones and white ones? Try hitting the black ones, now try hitting the white ones. See how they're different? There's black ones and there's white ones? Yes, now try hitting the black ones again. Now try hitting the white ones. Right?
Yeah.
It's so tight and tiny what you can actually input into the human brain.
Yeah.
If you have never been exposed to something before. Right?
I think So on that part, I think that's what makes you, or from what I've seen, you've gotten such great results from your coaching. I think that's what sets you apart, because the greatest coaches that I've seen break down the way that they transmit skill sets to a fundamental level. You're not starting from, hey, start with the notes. You're starting from the bare bones. Here's a piano. Here's how to press the button on the piano. Here's the sound that it emits.
Yep. And so I often joke that now I teach CEOs the same thing that I used to teach 9-year-olds, because the fundamentals are all the same.
Yeah.
Right? And so what is that thing that I was teaching? Well, what I was doing is I was always teaching the big picture and the fundamental next step. Right? And so I told you the whole, this is a piano, this is black key, this is a white key. Here's the problem with all of that. That is incredibly boring.
Yeah.
And I was an after-school program, and so if the children got bored, I didn't get paid.
Yeah.
Right? And so it couldn't just be, this is a black key and this is a white key. Now hit that black key 5,000 times and then you'll understand how to hit it. It has to be, okay, so that's what that is. Now here's the big picture of what you're learning. Here's the beauty of music.
So you're selling them on the vision too.
Right? Yeah. And so that actually gave me a really good capacity to zoom in and zoom out to any concept when I work with somebody. And so now when I work with, a $50 million business owner and we're talking about what to do,
yeah,
we're constantly zooming out to look at the business as a whole and then zooming back in to figure out the practical next step. And it's really that dance that helps a human move forward in life.
I see. And about that, because you've worked with such a wide variety of leaders, entrepreneurs, business owners, everyone. I know you've worked with like 7-figure people, 8-figure, 9-figure people. What is the biggest difference that you've seen in that class of entrepreneur, right? Like what separates that 7-figure guy from the 8-figure guy to the 9-figure guy?
Okay, here's one of my favorite things. So if you speak with somebody at a higher level than you, and they didn't get there by luck, and they're good at giving you advice, the advice is always going to be a little bit boring and a little bit disappointing. Because they are looking for the thing that works, and you are looking for the discovery that feels good. And that is the difference, is at every level, they become more practical.
I see.
They just go, well, what realistically would work, right? And this is the same for me. I've found I'll go speak to somebody that's at a higher level than me, and they'll be like, well, what if you did just this? And I'll go, oh, yeah, that would work.
I mean, yeah. Funny enough, like a lot of these coaching sessions, they end up you go in with a problem, expecting for a new solution. You're like, if I just get that one magic pill, all my problems are solved. Yeah. And the next thing you know, the person that's actually where you want to be, they're like, man, you already have the solution. Just do that. Like it's as simple as what's in front of your face. But
I'm just gonna add that also presents a problem, right? Because we don't want to do boring things.
Yeah.
Right? And so how do you get through that? Because there is a way through it. And so what I try to do with people is I try to take what they're working on and break it down to stupid levels, right? To where it is that boring basic thing of the next step. But then the other piece is, how do we find magic in that step? How do we get hyped about that? Because that's where your hype should be, is in the thing that would get you a result.
Exactly.
Right? If the thing that would get you the result is push-ups, then you should be hyped about push-ups as opposed to the 30-day workout plan that you have been, typing up in Excel spreadsheets.
Right.
Right? And so you have to get to that stupid base level where, like, a lot of times with my clients, I say, like, if we've gotten to the point where the next step sounds stupid, then we figured it out.
Yeah.
Right? The other piece is going back to that broad vision and seeing how it all fits in there, right?
Gotcha.
Because you have to figure out how to want it.
And that's the thing. A lot of entrepreneurs know what they need to do, but somehow they're just not doing it. So what have you found is the biggest way to overcome that procrastination factor of like doing what you know you need to do in order to grow the business?
Yeah. So, I mean, I made a whole personality test about productivity, but if I were to break it into some simple things, I would say one of the key elements is you need to actually look at the reasons why you're not doing something, right? Like, what is the actual story, right? And usually we procrastinate because something feels too hard or too easy. One or the other. It's either too much or it's too boring, right? It's anxiety or it's boredom. And so if you look at your story around, like, what's your excuse for why didn't you do it this week? Well, I didn't have time. Okay, well, does that mean life was too hard? Well, then let's make it simpler. Right? Like, because a lot of us like get lost in this narrative of, well, you just need to try harder. And I was a workaholic. I know that doesn't always work. Right. And so like, if it was, I was too busy this week, well, then something like, let's find out if that's legitimate.
Mm-hmm.
And in that case, something was too hard. Right.
Yeah.
And then also, were you just entertaining yourself? Then, okay, maybe the thing is too boring. And so you either need to make the thing more interesting or make it more easy. We never, I want to be really clear, we never procrastinate for no reason. There's no such thing.
Well, how do you go about making that thing interesting? So, for example, if it's doing your taxes, right? It's such a boring topic, but we have to do it. So, what are some approaches that the everyday person can take in order to actually like start making their menial tasks enjoyable?
Yeah. So I really like the pinball method, is what I like to call it. And you know how when you use a pinball machine and you flick the pinball up, it bounces all around and then it kind of starts to slow down?
Yeah.
So you can do that with yourself. And ADHD people are going to love this. So there's a lot of tasks that if you sit down to do them all in one setting, you're just going to go crazy. And yes, like we can talk about the personal growth of like developing your capacity to sit for longer, but that's exhausting.
The assiduity habit or something
Let's talk
like
about
that.
just the simple hack that makes this work.
Yeah.
So the simple hack that makes this work is, let's say you need to do taxes. Well, you also need to clean your clothes, right? They need to go in the wash, and you probably haven't stretched that day, and maybe you need a meal prep. So what you can do is you can set up a 2-hour block for yourself and say, in this 2-hour block, I have a certain set of tasks to do. And the tasks are a hard task, an easy task, a restful task, and a restful activity and an energizing activity. And so an example of that could be taxes, hard, washing your clothes, easy, working out, energizing, stretching on the floor, restful. Right? So hard, easy, energizing, restful.
Yeah.
And say, I have 2 hours, a 2-hour time block where those are the only things that I'm allowed to do. I can do any of them, but I can't do anything else. And so what you'll find yourself doing is you will find yourself flicked into that container of activities like a pinball, where you'll sit down to do your taxes and you'll be like, I don't want to. And you'll just jump up and you're like, I hate this. And you go to wash clothes and you're like, I just don't feel like doing this right now. And then you'll go to work out for a little bit and you'll be like, 3 weights and like, fuck, I don't want to work out. And then you go sit on the floor and then you'll get bored.
Yeah.
And then you'll go back to your taxes and you'll ping between all the different ones in different orders. And then if you keep that container though, and you say you can do any of those, and the reason why is because that's a healthy human environment. You can do any of those, but you can't do anything else. Then what'll happen is you'll start to ping onto the one that's actually good for you in that moment. And so you start to work on taxes and you realize, I can't stand it. And the real reason you can't stand it is because your mind is freaking chaotic. It's like super, super anxious at that moment.
Right.
And so you go to, wash clothes and your worries come up. And so you don't do that. And then you go lift a weight, and all of a sudden, you get a little hit of some good chemicals.
Yeah.
And your brain settles a little bit. And then you go sit down on the floor to stretch, and now your mind starts to calm a little bit. And now you go back to taxes, and all of a sudden you're able to do like 3 lines.
Yeah.
Congratulations. You're more functional. And so then you're like, I'm exhausted, I can't stand it anymore, and you go back to washing clothes. And if you give yourself like this set of things to do that are healthy human behavior, then shockingly you will become healthy. And healthy humans are functional, and they are able to get shit done.
Do you feel like that's the best way to make progress on what you need to be doing, though? For example, I can, in that container, if I choose the gym as my energizing activity, stretching as my resting activity, and then the hard activity that I need to do is maybe writing some copy, right? But I'm circling back between the tasks, and then the switching cost of attention between those tasks, that's super expensive, especially if it's a deep work task. So how do you combat not making progress on the stuff that actually matters versus distracting yourself with the non-essential per se, like lifting weights in that period of time when you should be, completing your task?
Yeah, 5 minutes of quality work is more valuable than 30 minutes of shitty work. And so yes, the cost of changing tasks is expensive. But if it gets you into a place where you can actually drop in mentally to do something useful, then it's worth it. This is a thing I actually often run into with high performers, is they're not willing to waste resources where it will get them better results.
Yeah.
Right? And so what I just described to a like an A player, oftentimes when they first hear it, they're like, oh, like I'm going to waste so much time. And I'm like, yeah, but how long have you been trying to do your taxes for? 3 hours? 5 hours? 7 hours? How long have you been scrolling TikTok? It's not working. Would you like a method that works?
Yeah.
Right? And so it's like, how can you waste a little bit on the front end in order to get big returns on the back end? This is a concept that plays out in a lot of things. Like I have to work a lot to get business owners often to waste money on employees. Where I'm like, can you waste some of their time, please, and see what happens?
Yeah.
Right? Like, do it on purpose, like for R&D, right?
Yeah.
Right. Figure out how to take this employee on that you don't know how to use yet, so that you can learn how to use an employee. Right? Because we're always looking for that perfect recipe, but sometimes it gets in the way. Right? And so what I just described to you is messy, but it works better than the perfect thing.
The perfect thing, yeah. And now looking back at it too, once you're in the zone of like, I think the hardest part is like just getting started.
Yes.
Because when you start doing your taxes, you're like in line 3, section code, whatever. You suddenly find yourself on line 4, then line 5, and then suddenly you're done with it. So
yeah, the first time I did this, I was writing a music book, and I was like, okay, I really need to work on this music book. My car really needs cleaned, and also I need to relax. And there was a trampoline out in the backyard. And so I was like, I can write in the book, or I can clean my car, or I can jump on this trampoline or like meditate on it, right? So activity or relaxing. And so I wrote like 2 notes in the book, and then I walked out to the car, and I got like 1 cup out of the car and tossed it in the trash. And then I got on the trampoline and I jumped 3 times. And then I went back to the book and I wrote 3 notes. And then I cleaned out a seat. And then I got a workout in. And then I worked for a half hour on the book.
wow.
And then I cleaned my car. And then I meditated and took a nap on the trampoline. And I had a good fucking day. And so a lot of us, with our insane level of commitment to get the one thing done, create so much stress and tension that we can't do it. And so we just gnaw on that thing in between donuts and TikTok and the task until we just feel sad and guilty at the end of the day.
Yeah. No, it's also managing the dichotomy of the expectation of what that perfect day looks like. Because for a ton of high performers out there, they're like, wake up at 5 a.m., do your morning routine, go into your cold plunge sauna, and then do 4 hours of deep work, and then do managerial tasks. In if the expectation is that structure, going from task to task to task, especially in your deep work block, it misaligns expectations, but I see how it actually gets you into that flow state too.
Yeah. So what I'm describing is if your deep work isn't working, if you can do 4 hours of deep work every day and crush it, congratulations, good job.
Yeah.
I'm talking about for if it doesn't work, right? And so most people, they come to me and they're like, well, how do I do 4 hours of deep work every day? I want to crush that. And I'm like, can you? And they're like, no, I can't. I'm like, okay, well, let's get you closer.
So this is the first step in getting towards that goal of doing more deep work or whatever it is, right?
Yeah. And it's interesting. You talked about like the cost of task switching. Here's another thing is dropping in is also a skill set.
Dropping what?
Dropping in. Tasks, like dropping into a task, getting into flow. It's skill. And you can be worse and better at it, right? And so an example of this is I had a client who was struggling to work out, and he was like, man, I love the exercise bike. I don't know why I never get on it. I'm like, when I get on it, I'll go for like 90 minutes. I'll go for 2 hours. I don't care. I love it. I'm like, awesome. Great. You have to get on the exercise bike 20 times today and work out for 2 minutes max and then get off. You don't need practice exercising on the bike. You need practice getting on the bike. And he was like, oh, I'm going to hate this. And I was like, yeah, you are. And then he got good, right?
Yeah.
And so this thing that I just described of like task switching between these different things until you drop into the work, it actually gives you reps on dropping in until you're good at dropping in.
Wow, that's a good point. And think, I remember one of our earlier conversations where we're like, what's the best way to grow on social media, start building a brand, creating content? And then I was trying to jump the gun. I was like, yeah, I need all this, I need all that. And then you're like, no, man. Step 1, get behind a camera. Step 2, record.
Correct.
Practice that over and over again, and then look where we are now. So, no, I totally see it's a different perspective shift, because I agree. A high performing entrepreneur, they have an expectation of what their life should be like, but anything that challenges that status quo, they start tweaking in the beginning. They're like, no way, that's a huge switching cost. Like, I could never do that. I'm gonna kill my business if I do that. But I mean, what if that's the key that actually leads to the growth in your business?
Yeah, so a lot of entrepreneurs are really good at scaling. And scaling is a practice of putting a bunch of orderly structures in place. And what happens when they do that is they get really focused on order. And order becomes good. And disorder becomes bad. But the problem is all improvement comes from disorder. All of it. All new is disorder, right? New by definition is disorder. Because it's a thing that's not in the order of things.
Yeah.
Right? That's what new is. And so you can implement a system with order, but you can't grow the system with order. You need disorder. You need to be able to implement new things. You need to waste time. You need to waste money. You need to waste resources. You need to explore. And don't get me wrong, I'm very pro bootstrapping. Like be efficient, but don't be without waste completely, or you will calcify. Right?
Well, technically, if you are bootstrapping, you're paying in terms of you're paying that cost in another resource, which is your time.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
It doesn't always have to be a financial resource, but wow, that's a really unique perspective. I guess when do you know what is the perfect time to balance that chaos and order in business? Like you stated, when you're scaling your business, it's all about order, structure, process, systems, team, and routine. But when is it just like an intuitive factor of okay, everything's too structured now, I need to add some chaos in, or how do you find that balance?
Yeah. So first, you have to look at the thing you're doing and ask yourself if it's working or if it's not working. And then you have to ask yourself if you are doing orderly things that are working and if you are doing disorderly things that are working, right? So what that would mean is like, are you showing up to work every day? That would be an orderly thing, right?
Yeah.
Consistency, right? Okay, are you doing that? And then are you researching new product lines? Like if that's a thing you need to be doing, right? And that's a disorder thing. That's a new thing, right? Like, are you giving yourself new ideas, and are you figuring out how to maintain ideas or maintain behaviors? And then when you let's say the showing up for work every day. All right, and you realize, oh, I'm not showing up for work every day. Well, now you need to figure out, do I need to discipline myself into showing up for work every day? Or is that actually just like not working? Meaning I've tried to discipline myself into showing up for work every day for 3 months. And it turns out every time I try to do that, I go insane. And then you go, oh, okay. So maybe the answer isn't a more orderly structure of go to work every day. And maybe I need to explore cycles. And it might mean I need to go to work every 6 days, and then I need to take a break, and then every 6 days take a break, and then 3 days off, and then 4 days go as hard as possible, 12 hours, right? You know, like who knows?
Yeah.
But all of that is a mess that you have to explore. And so because making a business, the thing that is obviously working is the orderly part, we get biased towards the order. And so basically, most of the people that I work with, they're trying to solve everything with order. They're trying to fix everything with putting a system in place. And if it doesn't work, then they go, I need to system harder.
Or I need a better or new system, per se. Yeah.
Right? You always go, I need to be more disciplined. Right? And it's just a really small and uncreative way of looking at the problem. Right? And so, like, can you, as opposed to saying, I just need to show up for work every day, can you ask, why am I not showing up for work every day?
Huh.
And as soon as you ask that question, you're opening the door to disorder. You're opening the door to chaos.
Chaos.
Right? Because there's a why that you don't know. Right? And so it's kind of complex thing to explain at first.
Yeah.
But once you get it, you see that it's everywhere. There's like an orderly way of looking at things, and there's a chaotic way of looking at everything. And if you try to answer everything with order, or you try to answer everything with chaos, it's going to mess you up.
It's finding that balance between both order and chaos, not order or chaos.
Yes.
Now, about that, as you said, the world is very biased towards order rather than chaos. And people, from my observation, are averse to change, right? They fear risk. They fear the unknown. So when you're going from known systems, process, structure, and routine to the unknown order and chaos, how would you say, like, even for other entrepreneurs out there that are pretty risk averse, what is the best way to navigate taking on new risk? Like, what's your philosophy or paradigm on that?
So this philosophy is my primary investment philosophy, which is also my business philosophy, which is also my life philosophy, which is become more capable of risk over time. And if you want to reword that into self-development, you can say, take the step that enables you to take another step.
Gotcha.
Or take the risk that enables you to take another risk. And so that's how you want to approach chaos, right? Because the reality is, if there's too much disorder in a system, it will break, right? So you can't just go, oh, I just need disorder and chaos and my life's going to be awesome. It's just, you need to not have everything structured exactly one way.
Yeah.
And so how do you get the 1% of chaos that works? Well, you take a very small risk. You put a very small tweak into your system to create change, right? And you put the amount of change into the system that if the change fails, you are not harmed and you are more informed. And if the change succeeds, then you win and you are more capable of making another change. And so let me make this super practical, especially to your audience. Let's talk about ad spend.
Classic marketers. Yeah.
Okay, so I think it's a pretty well-known concept in this world that there are two reasons to spend money.
Correct.
One is to get information, and the other is
Data.
to get money.
Correct.
Right? That hasn't changed since
Data or a
the last
return on
time
ad
I
spend.
checked in, right? Okay. Ad spend works the same as the last time I've thought about it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. You're the expert. So those are the two reasons, right? And so this is in line with this concept of become more capable of risk over time. And so what it means is you need to either spend money where the money doesn't get you more money, right? That's a risk.
Yes.
But it informs you.
Correct.
And that makes you more capable of doing something else, right? Or if it makes you money, then that also makes you more capable of doing something else. And so that's actually where that expression in the ad spend world comes from, is this concept, which is you need to take a step that will enable you to take the next step, regardless of outcome. And all of the best investors work this way. All of the best investors operate where the worst outcome is they make less money than they intended. It's not I make money or I lose money. It's I either make money or
I lose a little bit of it, but
lose a little bit and learn, or I make less than I thought I was going to learn.
Exactly. And that brings you back to the point. It's not, I mean, you're essentially buying lessons, and the point of business is to keep playing the game.
Yes.
So it's all about taking calculated risks from what I've seen that don't kick you out from being that don't kick your ability to be able to play the game. Like
Correct.
you just can't take a existential risk that's going to throw you out from being able to take future risks. But
Correct. And it just so happens that that's how you should approach life.
Exactly. And no, it brings me back to the concept of how you do one thing is how you do everything, right?
Yes.
Because the micro principles apply to the macro. So what like for the audience here, it doesn't just have to be for marketers, but also like business owners and entrepreneurs specifically. What is the most like compelling thing that you have seen outside of business that is directly correlated into business, like for the people that you've coached? Like maybe it's a physics principle, maybe it's like a nature, like a violin principle, right? What is a shocking thing that you've seen correlates so well to business that you really wouldn't think of usually?
Relationships. Yeah. One-on-one relationships can be scaled micro and macro to government levels to what happens inside your brain. So the way two humans relate is the same way you relate to your own inner mind space, which is the same way a governmental society relates to a governmental governing body relates to a society.
I see.
And so if you can learn how to relate to another human being, you can learn how to do business. And so I'll give a basic principle that to make it practical. One of my favorite expressions in relationships is learn how to be selfish in the way that other people get what they want. And so if you are in a relationship with somebody and you want them to sparkle and you want to feel good, then learn how to do that. Learn how to get the thing from the other person that you want and have them, in the process of giving you that thing, feel amazing. Right?
Right.
And so I want you to give me lots of attention. Okay, how am I going to do that? Preferably by making you feel really good when you give me attention.
Reward the behavior.
Yeah. And even deeper than that, understand what rewards you want, not what I want, right? And so what I want is attention in this example. What you want might be attention. It might be approval. It might be money. It might be any other sort of thing. But if I figure out what you want and I make it clear that if you give me attention, you'll get the thing that you want, then you'll give me lots of attention.
Exactly.
And that's called business. And so there's actually very little difference between healthy relationships and good business.
Wow. And on that topic, because I wouldn't even say principle. I think the paradigm that you operate with, it applies to so much more than business too, right? So even with relationships, so how do you see the best business partnerships apply to like the best relationships too? Do they usually start off as like friendships or buddies, or do they start off going in as business partners and then end up becoming better friends? Like what are some observations that you've seen in that front?
Ask the question again.
Yeah. So from a relationship aspect, like in the world, have you seen the best like business partnerships stem from, going in as first being friends, or, they first go in as business partners and then eventually become friends? Because that's a huge thing. A lot of entrepreneurs go into business deals before being like regular friends, but then they might not be best business partners.
Yeah. Okay. So it pretty much all comes from aligned incentives. Relationships, business, friends, all of it. And so it's not about like, are we friends now and business later? Are we business now and friends later? And in relationships, it's not like first we're friends and now we're dating and now we're married. That's not really that relevant. What's relevant is how much are we getting the thing that we want from the interaction. Right? And so, if you're a cute girl and I'm a cute guy and we're in a space together and we find that delightful, that's a point towards a relationship.
Right.
Right? And then if we move towards more interaction and we find that more delightful, that's more points towards the relationship.
Right.
Right? And so it's the same with business. It's like, do you do a small business deal and it goes well? Then you do a bigger business deal? Awesome. So like the good things come from developing good interactions. Might not explain that one well. Ask me questions if
no, that makes total sense. It's the aligned incentives, because the intention of a relationship is that you're better together than being separate, and you're building towards a long-term vision. For example, my business partner Noah and I, we have a very similar long-term vision, and we believe that we have complementary skill sets that we can build towards that, and we'll accelerate towards the achievement of that vision faster together than without. So I mean, that gives a lot of interesting perspective, because I've never seen it described that way, having an aligned incentive structure. But kind of pivoting the conversation here, I'm curious to hear more about like what's your long-term vision. Like I know you currently do productivity coaching or like leadership type coaching. Where do you see yourself as like a thought leader or a key like a influencer in this space? Like, where do you see yourself in about 5-10 years, and how do you see the world transforming around that?
So let's see. So there's a bunch of books I want to publish. I've written one of them, getting ready to publish it. Are you asking like what are the things that I want to do myself?
Yeah.
So yeah, do want to do that. I'm going to be probably involved in the AI space quite a bit. Going to continue to coach. I think I'm going to be available for one-on-one coaching at the high level for a very long time, because I've found that that's just one of my best skill sets. And so I'm going to continue to do that, but I'm going to begin running a lot of workshops in the Austin area, particularly. I'm going to have things that people can fly into. It's going to be a lot of just helping people figure out life and helping people figure out how to scale their companies.
Dude, that's awesome. That's awesome. And speaking of AI, like how do you see AI impacting the future of business? Because it's already affected a ton of roles, right? People are like, oh, AI is going to replace jobs, or AI is going to empower people that are already good at their jobs to become even better. Like, what's your perspective on that?
AI is now a part of your environment.
Mm-hmm.
And humans are good, adaptable creatures that know how to thrive in environments. So just consider AI to be like just there, right? And so the more you just think of it as this is just a part of my life now, how can I use this to win? You'll win. If you think of it as something that's interrupting your life and taking away your life and taking away your job, taking away other things, you'll suffer. But if you just think of it as a tool, you think of it as a thing to relate to even, then you'll succeed.
I see.
Because humans know how to thrive in any environment. And so AI is just going to be even cooler.
I got you. Earlier, when you were speaking about your upbringing, one thing that really sparked sparked some curiosity was you mentioned you grew up in a very structured upbringing in terms of, okay, I have to follow these set of rules. I have to follow this religion or this ideology or set of beliefs. How do you see, and this might be a little bit of a controversial topic, but I'm curious to get your perspective on this. How do you see like religion and politics affecting business owners and their decision-making processes? Have you seen it like positively impact them, or has it always been a negative impact in what you've observed?
Like throughout history?
No, just from your experience.
Just in general? I mean, religion can have amazing effects if it supports if it supports your action, right? And so religion has helped a lot of people do great things.
Yeah.
And politics is, I mean, if you think of it like a football game, it's not very helpful. But it's just kind of the macroeconomic state of the world. And so if you think of it as a thing to navigate, then you can win.
I feel you. And the reason I bring that up is because a lot of people, they get into the more woo-woo side of like, oh, they think themselves into a state of like a non-action. Mm-hmm. And they're like, oh, if I just think these thoughts, law of attraction, manifestation, I'm just going to get everything that I want. Mm-hmm. And then they're stuck in that paradigm of like, oh, I just need to think good things and then I'm just going to manifest my reality, compared to the complete opposite guys that are like, dude, I thinking positive thoughts is stupid. I just need to like roll up my sleeves and get to work. So, like, how do you manage that dichotomy of like, oh, being so woo-woo up in the air versus being more practical and action oriented?
Yeah. So the way I see it is there's two religions on earth. And all of the other religions that people think of as separate religions kind of fit in these two buckets, which is there's the religion of vision and there's the religion of awareness. And so the religion of vision is mostly what would be considered Western religion. All of the religions with star symbols, usually, which is vision is the concept of I will look up at the highest ideal, I will align myself with it, and I will do what is required to get there, right? And so that's Christianity, right? Like align yourself with the star, move towards the star. And then the other religion is, a lot of times it's what's considered Eastern religion, is awareness, which is sit down on the ground, take a breath, see if you can become aware of your breath. Become aware of the smallest possible thing you can become aware of. And then begin to spread your awareness out. And then begin to be aware of your actions and how you behave and how the world interrelates. And start to see good and bad through your awareness. And from there, eventually your awareness will grow so much that you will fall into alignment with the universe and you will become at one with and like God, right?
Yeah.
That is Eastern religion. And so one's top down, the other's bottom up.
Bottom up.
They're the same trajectory, just from a different place. And most people that make religion their awareness, make awareness their religion, become very woo-woo, and they value manifestation, and they struggle with action, and they're incredibly insightful and wise. And most people who use vision as their only strategy often are extremely good action takers and incredibly stupid. Because they don't think. Because why would they? Right?
They just act and do.
Yeah. And so the reality is you need to balance those two things. They both have beauty within them. They both are important. You have to learn how to look up at your highest star and go towards it. And you have to learn how to look down at the ground and the place that you're walking.
Now, a more prevalent question is, when do you know when to make that switch? Like to switch into awareness versus action, right? Or the vision paradigm as you described it.
Yeah, and so one of the ways I like to look at this is this tied to another concept, which is learn how to stop caring about your dreams so much, which is your dream is supposed to be like a guiding star, right? Like I wanted to be a rock star, but I got obsessed with it. Like that was all I cared about, and I turned into a workaholic, and I couldn't pay my toll bills. I was an idiot. Like all I did was I just wanted to rock star, right? And it was because I was just staring at this dream. And so take this analogy. If you navigate by the stars like an olden time person, and you know where north is by looking at the stars, should you be looking at the stars or should you be looking at the path? Hopefully both.
Yeah, both, yeah.
Right?
It's not just one or the other.
And if you stare at the stars and you walk on the path, then eventually the path is going to curve and you're going to fall off a cliff. Because you just like walking, staring at the star.
Yeah.
Right? You just fall off the cliff. But if you just look at the path and it starts forking and, you know, like it goes into the wilderness and you can't always see the path and you don't look up, you're just going to get lost.
Yeah.
Right? And that's kind of life. Right? Like when you're scaling a business, you need to look at like the end goal of how you're going to like what's the revenue that you want to get? What's the niche that you're trying to scale towards? What's the audience, you know, what's the target avatar, you know, all those things you need to like target yourself towards those. And then also like what's the ad that you're making today?
Ground yourself in the action too. Yeah.
What's the ad?
Yeah.
Right? You know, we know a lot of people that they decide they want to become business owners and they spend 3 weeks designing the business card.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, like that doesn't work, right? And so you need this balance of like, okay, what am I going towards? And then like, how do I just like make a sale?
Yeah.
How do I just do a thing?
So about that, I think to wrap things up, the last topic that I did want to touch on is the concept of excess importance, right? In terms of like from a mindset perspective, I see a lot of entrepreneurs. They're like, "Oh my God, I'm shooting for 100K a month. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it or die, like die trying, right? That type of mindset. They place this goal on such a pedestal where they're like, "Oh my God, everyone who's at 100K a month is a god. I need to bow down to them." Or like they place such high importance, and they like a lot of them who operate in that mindset, unfortunately, never like get there. So, what is your perspective and approach to reducing the level of importance so you actually have a sustainable and an attainable process for reaching that goal?
Yeah. So first, understand where that behavior comes from. So where that behavior comes from is from the societal narrative of, you know, shoot for the moon, and if you fail, you'll land among the stars. This is common wisdom. Why does that exist? Well, it exists because if everybody does that and a minority of the people succeed at it, then society will win. But you don't want to embrace that narrative because like 0.001% of people who take on that way of looking at the world, I'm just going to dream big and shoot for the biggest thing possible, actually do it. Everybody else just dies. Alone. Ignored. Invisible. Because they just shot for this one big thing and they missed. Right? Do you want to be one of those people? If you think you're highly accurate and highly competent, then go for it. If you consider yourself just a normal human, then you should start using a different method. And that other method is actually, to tie it back into what we talked about earlier, is take the step that enables you to take another step. Right? And so take a little bit of time to understand what $100 million a year company looks like. Like look at get some understanding of like what that is. And then also, do you know how to make $10?
Start with that. Make your first dollar.
Start with $10. And if you only obsess about that thing far away, you have 1 in a million, 1 in a billion chance. And sure enough, you are going to get written up on Times Magazine, and it's going to be great. But that's not how you increase the likelihood of success. It's actually how you reduce it. So the way that you increase the likelihood of success is you continue stacking wins. And so no matter what revenue level your business is at, if you stack wins, eventually you're going to get to the point where you can make more revenue.
Yeah.
And it's going to be great, right? And so you should become less obsessed with the outcome that you would like to make and more obsessed with the outcome that you can make. And if you can do that, then you can become more capable of creating outcomes. And if you're more capable, then eventually you can get to that thing.
Wow. Well put, man. Well put. So with that being said, Josh, I just wanted to once again thank you for jumping on the pod here. I know you do executive/leadership coaching, and you also work with the masses to increase productivity. Could you share a little bit more about like what you coach on and where people can find you?
Yeah. If you want to check me out, go to @JoshTerryPlays on Instagram or any other channel, and that's the place to check me out. If you're a business owner, you can contact me. You can contact me through Instagram. You can also find other channels through there. But yeah, everything's through social media on @JoshTerryPlays @JoshTerryPlays.com. Now I'm messing it up. You can find me on social media @JoshTerryPlays, and the website's JoshTerryPlays.com.
It's awesome, man. Appreciate you sharing some interesting perspective here, and thank you for jumping on the show.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Awesome.